Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us once again here at Blinding Insights. I'm Jeff Swanson. I'd like to speak with you this afternoon about a matter that is weighing heavily upon my mind and on my heart. This past week, as some of you may know, right here in my hometown of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, I was arrested by a Norwegian-American police officer named Sergeant Sigrid Bjornstad. And let me just tell you what happened. I was out pretty late one night, and it turns out that I had locked the keys to my Mazda minivan inside the car, and so I had procured from an establishment there on the street a wire coat hanger and was attempting to gain entry to my own car. And who should arrive at the scene but this Norwegian-American law enforcement officer who approached me, and you know how they look with that sort of blunt face that looks like a wet loaf of bread, and this ridiculous blonde crew cut and these steel blue eyes, and he demanded to see some identification. So I produced for Sergeant Bjornstad my Duke University faculty ID card. He took a look at it and he saw my name, Swanson, and that's when the trouble started. So he looks at my card, looks at me, he says, Dr. Swanson, do you know how you get a Swede to laugh at a joke on New Year's Eve? And I said, very respectfully, I said, I don't know, Sergeant Bjornstad. Why don't you tell me, and then we'll both know. And he goes, you tell him the joke on Christmas Eve. So I didn't get it. I couldn't figure this out. I thought about this, and then, you know, a little while later, it dawns on me that this sergeant was suggesting that it might take a Swede like about a week to catch on to a joke. Well, this was disrespectful. This is humiliating. And so I was incensed. I demanded an apology. I said, this is an outrage. And because it became clear to me at that moment that I was dealing with an egregious case of ethnic profiling, and he was telling me this because he knew of my immigrant Swedish background. Well, he wasn't going to apologize. So, some heated discussion ensued. Things started to get a little bit amped up. And the next thing you know, there's some forth and back. You know, I got a little bit agitated. He tells me, you're under arrest. Under arrest? I am not kidding. And I was hauled away in handcuffs in the back of a police cruiser to the Chapel Hill City Jail, where I was booked on charges of disorderly conduct and tumultuous behavior. That's the word they use, tumultuous. Well, I couldn't get out of there until I called one of my well-dressed, well-coiffed, relentless, vicious law professor friends who came down there and threatened to file a massive lawsuit against Sergeant Bjornstad and the entire Chapel Hill Police Department for this egregious misconduct. So that would have been that, but you know, I couldn't leave it there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm bothered by this. I'm troubled. And I think that we should use this as a teachable moment to try to engage in a national conversation about this problem of Inter-Scandivanian-American ethnic relations, which are kind of at a low point right now. And so the thing I think we should do is to start at the top. And I'd like the President of the United States to invite Sergeant Sigrid Bjornstad and myself to the White House to sit down and have a thoughtful and reflective and honest conversation over a beer. I think this is the way to do it. I think the three of us, Barack and Sigrid and myself, sitting down, could make some progress, get some traction on this issue in the Rose Garden. And Mr. President, let me just tell you, I've already reached out to the sergeant. He's agreeable to the whole thing. So it's just up to you. And I did vote for you. I voted for you twice. Once in the North Carolina primaries to cancel out my wife's vote for Hillary, and again in the general election. But I don't want you to take my vote for granted. I think you should take this seriously. I look forward to hearing from you, and I think it's going to be great. So that's it. That's my suggestion. Just in case you wonder what kind of beer I'd like, it's not really about the beer. I'm not much of a beer drinker. I will drink a beer with you. You're the president and Sergeant Bjornstad, but it really doesn't matter. A Guinness Stout would be good. A Foster's or a Fat Tire or a Sam Adams or a Bass. Again, doesn't really matter. This is not really what it's about. A Newcastle, a Dos Equis would be fine, or an Anchor, or a Pilsner Urquell. A Kirin Ichiban or a Beck. Beck's would be perfectly acceptable. A Harpoon Munich Dark would be fine. A Buzzards Bay or a St. Pauli Girl, a Warsteiner, or a Spaten, basically any kind of an Oktoberfest would be great. But I want to emphasize it's not about the beer. I'm not really that into it, but just in case you'd like to know, a Tsingtao would be fine, or a Smutty Nose Old Brown Dog Ale, Carlsberg, any kind of a smoked porter would be perfectly acceptable. A Zinnebar or a Ned Flanders, a St. Bernardus Triple. But what the heck, Mr. President? I'll have what you're having. Let's make it a Bud Light. And for all of us here at Blinding Insights, good night. I'm Jeff Swanson.